He was this close to becoming a TV icon, but instead, Hollywood slapped a nickname on him and laughed while his dreams crumbled. You know him as Bookman from Good Times, but what if I told you that role destroyed more than it built? What if I told you Johnny Brown had the talent to rival legends, but was blocked, silenced, and typecast into oblivion? This isn't just a forgotten actor's story. It's one of the most shocking betrayals in Black TV history, and no one ever told it like this. What if I told you that one of television's most beloved comedic actors spent years fighting behind the scenes just to be seen as more than a punchline? What if the man who made us laugh every week was actually dealing with some serious drama that would make your jaw drop? And what if everything you thought you knew about Nathan Bookman from Good Times was just the tip of the iceberg? Today, we're diving deep into the untold story of Johnny Brown. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll never look at those Good Times reruns the same way again. So buckle up, because this story has more twists than a soap opera, and I promise you'll want to stick around until the very end to hear about the autobiography that could have exposed Hollywood's biggest secrets. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be typecast so hard that it ruins your entire career? Well, Johnny Brown lived that nightmare, and it all started with a role that was supposed to be his big break, but ended up becoming his biggest curse. Picture this. It's 1974, and Johnny Brown just landed a recurring role on one of America's hottest sitcoms. He's finally made it to the big time, right? Wrong. What nobody knew was that this role would trap him in a box so tight that he'd spend the rest of his career trying to break free. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. Johnny almost got an even bigger role that could have changed everything. Are you ready for this? Johnny Brown was this close to playing Lamont on Sanford and Son. Can you imagine? Instead of Demond Wilson calling Red Fox a big dummy every week, it would have been Johnny Brown. But something happened behind the scenes that killed that opportunity, and some insiders say it wasn't just bad luck. Now you might be wondering why Johnny didn't get that career-changing role. Well, hold on to your seats, because the entertainment industry in the 1970s was brutal for Black actors. There were so few opportunities that performers were literally competing for scraps, and sometimes established stars would block younger talent from getting roles that might overshadow them. I'm not saying that's exactly what happened, but the timing was awfully suspicious. So instead of becoming Lamont, Johnny ended up as Nathan Bookman, the superintendent everyone called Buffalo Butt. And here's where the story gets really interesting. You see that big smile Johnny always had on camera? Behind that smile was a man who was getting increasingly frustrated with being reduced to nothing more than a fat joke. Think about it for a second. Every single episode, Johnny would walk through that door just so the Evans family could insult his weight. Every script, every scene, every line seemed designed to make him the butt of the joke. And after years of this treatment, Johnny finally reached his breaking point. But here's what most people don't know. Johnny didn't just sit there and take it. He actually went to the producers and demanded that his character get more depth. He wanted Nathan Bookman to be more than just a walking punchline. Can you guess what the producers told him? They basically patted him on the head and told him to keep doing what he was doing. Now, while Johnny was fighting for respect behind the scenes, there was even more drama happening on the Good Times set. The show was already dealing with tension between the adult actors and the producers about JJ's increasingly stereotypical behavior. Esther Rolle and John Amos were constantly battling with the network about the direction of the show, and Johnny found himself caught in the middle of all this chaos. But wait, it gets worse. As JJ character became more popular, everyone else's screen time got cut. Johnny went from being a significant part of episodes to literally just walking in, getting insulted, and walking out. Can you imagine how frustrating that must have been for someone with his talent? And speaking of talent, let me tell you something that might surprise you. Johnny Brown wasn't just a comedic actor. This man could sing, dance, and perform with the best of them. He would worked with Sammy Davis Jr. on Broadway, appeared on major variety shows, and had skills that television audiences barely got to see. Yet he was trapped playing this one-dimensional character that showcased none of his real abilities. Here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn. After Good Times ended in 1979, Johnny faced what every Black actor from that era feared most: being typecast so severely that no one could see him as anything else. Directors would look at him and only see Nathan Bookman. It didn't matter that he had range. It didn't matter that he could do drama, comedy, or musicals. He was Buffalo Butt, and that's all Hollywood wanted him to be. But Johnny didn't give up. He kept pushing, kept auditioning, kept trying to show the industry that he was more than just one character. And just when it looked like he might get his big break again, something happened that'll make you question everything you think you know about Hollywood diversity. Are you ready for this bombshell? Johnny was actually in talks to join The Love, boat cast in the early 1980s. This would have been perfect for him, a recurring role on a hit show that could have revitalized his career. The negotiations were going well, everything was looking positive, and then suddenly the whole deal fell apart. Now here's where it gets really ugly. According to industry insiders, a network executive allegedly said they already had enough diversity, with one black cast member implying that one black person was enough for the entire cruise ship. Can you believe that? Johnny never got an official explanation, but the role mysteriously went in another direction. This is the part of the story that really gets to me. Here was a talented performer who'd been making people laugh for years, and he was being blocked from opportunities not because of his talent, but because of his race. It's infuriating, and it shows just how much these performers had to endure behind the scenes. But Johnny kept fighting, kept working, kept trying to make it in an industry that seemed determined to keep him in a box. He took smaller roles, did live performances, and showed up at conventions where fans could see the real Johnny Brown, not just the character he played on TV. Now let's talk about something that might shock you even more. Despite being on one of the biggest shows of the 1970s, Johnny Brown's financial situation wasn't what you might expect. Those old TV contracts were absolutely terrible for actors. While Good Times kept making money in reruns for decades, performers like Johnny were getting checks that wouldn't even cover a tank of gas. When Johnny passed away in 2022, his estimated net worth was around $2 million. Now that might sound like a lot to regular folks, but for someone who was on one of television's biggest hits, that's practically nothing. These streaming services are still making bank off Good Times reruns, while the actual stars never saw the profits they deserved. And here's the part that'll really make you think. In his final years, Johnny was working on an autobiography that would have spilled all the tea about his decades in Hollywood. He was finally ready to tell his side of the story, to expose the industry secrets that most people never get to hear. But unfortunately, he passed away before he could finish it, taking those stories to the grave with him. Can you imagine what revelations that book might have contained? What other behind-the-scenes drama? What other instances of discrimination? What other battles for respect that we never knew about? It's frustrating to think that we'll never get to hear Johnny's full story in his own words. But here's what we can learn from Johnny Brown's journey. Every time you see him on screen, every time he made you laugh, remember that behind that performance was a man fighting for dignity and respect in an industry that often didn't want to give it to him. Every time he pushed back against a stereotype, every time he demanded better treatment, he was making it a little easier for the next generation of black performers. Johnny Brown's legacy isn't just about the laughs he gave us, or even the frustrations he endured. It's about being part of that first wave of black entertainers who kicked down doors so others could walk through them. When you think about the diverse television landscape we have today, remember that it exists partly because performers like Johnny fought battles that most viewers never even knew were happening. So the next time you watch Good Times and find yourself laughing at Nathan Bookman, remember there was a whole complicated, talented, determined man behind that character. A man who deserved better than being reduced to a punchline, but who handled his circumstances with grace and professionalism, even when the industry didn't return that respect. Johnny Brown gave us decades of entertainment while navigating a system that wasn't built for him to succeed. He fought for his dignity, he stood up for his fellow actors, and he never stopped trying to show the world that he was more than just one character. And that, my friends, is the real story behind the man, who made us laugh while dealing with struggles that would have broken lesser performers. That's the untold story of Johnny Brown, a tale of talent, perseverance, and the ongoing fight for respect in Hollywood. What do you think about Johnny's story? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe because there are plenty more untold stories where this came from.